Greetings, fellow quitters, and welcome back to the Command Q podcast. We're your hosts. I'm John Pelfrey.
And I'm Maari Casey.
No matter how much freelancing moves into the mainstream, there's still something about self-employment that can feel a little audacious.
Yeah, as much as our culture admires entrepreneurship, we're also skeptical of it. A lot of us remember that, sure, Jan, look we got from our friends and we decided to start our own business. And some of us are still getting it and getting it right now. At Uncompany, we talk a lot about how to make unconventional work more workable. Today, we're going to talk about a really underrated first step, and that is owning your decision to freelance. So stay tuned because later in this episode, we'll be joined by someone who has done just that and lived to tell the tale, Amy Burtch, owner of AMB Copy. All right, so warm up. John, how do you introduce yourself as a self-employed person without it sounding like you're kind of like in between jobs or just pretending?
It's funny. So the first thing that pops into my mind is there's a Todd Snyder song called In Between Jobs. That's really funny. Instead of saying that I'm self-employed or whatever, I just tend to, I would say, my name's John Pelfrey and I'm the owner of XYZ business, or, I'm the founder of XYZ business, or, or my business is da, da, da. And any of those work. And it then doesn't make it sound like I'm just sort of scared to admit that I'm a solo entrepreneur or a business owner or self-employed or whatever. I never ever referred to myself as self-employed just because I don't feel like even though it might just be me by myself, I want people to perceive me as I own a legitimate business. It's my business. I do this thing, I have, this is a part of me, but I founded it. I started it. It's my idea. I'm working on it every single day. It's not just a plaything.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like when you start to add too many adjectives to answer a question, then if people are like, oh, it's like I'm self-employed and I'm kind of doing this and I'm doing a little bit of that, delegitimizes it a little bit. It's like, I think just be direct. I run this business. This is what I do. Or I started this business. I founded this business. And I think be direct and then be out. Like, I don't think you need to over-explain. I think what happens is people are introducing themselves and they don't feel confident in their business. They introduce it and then they explain what it is a little bit too much. It's like you should be able to just to stand on what you do.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is really funny about this too is let's say that I opened up a tire business and I was a one-man show that changed people's tires.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's all I did. I wouldn't say, well, I'm a solo entrepreneur who sells tires and changes tires. I would say I own a tire business.
Right.
Right? It's so funny that we think in the knowledge-based workspace that we have to over-explain this thing. But in reality, doing any other business at all, if I had a house painting business and I was all by myself painting houses, I would say I own John's house painting and I paint houses.
That's really true. That's a good point.
So it's just funny how once we put it into the I'm a knowledge worker and I sit in front of a screen and I feel like I need to justify this, that, and it's like, no. I paint houses or, I make, marketing campaigns for people. Same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah. Just don't apologize for the work that you do. If you're building a business, you're building a business. At the end of the day, that's what it is. And you don't have to justify that to anybody else. I think that's the other part of this too, is it's not like you're talking to your mom and you're, 18 years old saying but mom, I really want to start a lawn mowing business. And I think I can do this all by myself and, whatever. And she says, well, it's expensive to buy a lawnmower and it's this and that. And you don't have to explain any of that stuff. It's not like you're talking to you're just, you do a thing and you can do it and you're making money at it. You're in business. Done.
Yep.
Yeah. So why do you think that people continue to view traditional employment as safe or stable when we're in this world where it seems like people get laid off all the time? If you're working in the marketing and advertising industry, it's seasonal sometimes, every year.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a seasonal thing. It's oh, well, it's February. Oh, well, it's this is the season when all the CEOs change overs and thus we lose the agency business. I feel I think the idea that it's stable is just because it is an old school traditional model that still perpetuates forward. And I think it's starting to change, but it'll take a long time for it to change. It's the idea that it's there's stability in the company. They hire you. They're going to keep you on until you're 55 and you retire with a gold watch, and then they're going to support you with a pension. Like there's just that old school, working mentality that even though our world is really different and changes quickly, that still has it. It's still traditional. And so their traditional feels safer, even though we know, especially in the space of creative and the world that we live in, it's not. I mean, maybe in some industries it is a little bit safer, but for marketing creative, a lot of knowledge workers, like you say, it's like it is not necessarily the safest option is to go into a traditional employment. I think that's part of it too. Like you can still be in a full-time traditional employment role, but still be actively looking for work and be ready if a layoff does come. And I think that's like, we can talk about that too. I think the old idea that you're going to get a job and you're going to have a job for a long time and the company's not going to, cut it out from under you quickly. I think that has kind of gone away, but we're just a little slow to catch up to it.
I do too. Yeah, I agree. I also think that because our health insurance and our benefits are tied to the traditional model of employment, I think that's part of what people think of when they think of safety and security. You're thinking like, I mean, if I leave this job and I start my own thing, I got to pay for my own health insurance. I got to find my own health insurance. I got to get on the marketplace. I've never done any of that stuff before. Is what I had. I'm going to be responsible for all of my own retirement. There's no employer matching for my 401k. That stuff starts to feel, one, overwhelming. How do I set that up for myself is a whole other topic and conversation. But then two, like I think that's a lot of the safety and security that people feel. That the paycheck is one thing, and knowing that you have a paycheck every 2 weeks and it's coming in, that regularity starts to feel like safety and security. So to me, those are the things that people think of when they think of safe and stable. When you own your own business, like your income is really weird. You can make a lot of money in 1 week and make no money for 6 weeks and then make more money. And then maybe it's not quite enough this month and it's a lot more next month. And you have to be able to sort of, level set yourself with a budget so that in those times when it's good, you're not thinking it's always going to be this way. Like I'm not always going to have a $50,000 month as a freelancer, but I might have one a year where just like that's when all the paychecks come in. And I got to treat that as like, okay, but I got to live on that for a certain number of months and I got to do, whatever, because I might not, especially with payment terms being extended and everything else, it might be before I get another paycheck. So I think the roller coaster ride's the other part.
That's true. Yeah, I think it's, we've been working in this world for a while and company for 12 years. And so it's like, we've been around it long enough to see how, for me, like the interesting thing is like the trends have changed to where I think people are viewing self-employment, freelance, whatever, solopreneurship, whatever you want to call it, less risky than I think they were when I started doing this, 15 years ago. And I think that's because people are starting to wake up a little bit and realize that, okay, while running my own business, there is these kind of peaks and valleys in income. I know over the course of 6 months, I can back up and look at 6 months and look at the income there versus like over here in my full-time job where it's like, I expected my salary to come in every single month and it did until November and then I had nothing. And so I think there's been this like definite shift over the course, especially since post-COVID. I mean, COVID just accelerated everything dramatically, but definitely been this shift over the course of the last 10 years to where it's like, I don't think people are looking at self-employment, freelance, entrepreneurship, whatever you want to call it, as not a legitimate pursuit, like not a legitimate career path. And I think that's really cool. And especially in creative type of roles, I think people are seeing that as like, okay, that's the way you're choosing to build your career versus like an agency portfolio. So to me, like that's really cool. What other trends have you noticed over the last couple of years that have been like exciting to move us towards this direction?
You're right. Starting off as freelance even 5 years ago seemed a little scarier. Once people started working from home in their homes and they realized that they were more productive, it's as if you were full-time employed or if you weren't, I think a lot of the light bulb went off for a lot of people like, oh, I have quiet time now. And in quiet time, I can get a lot done and I can be more productive and I can also manage my schedule and I can pick up my kids from school and I can still get more work done than I used to. And I used to be in the office for 12 hours a day and now I can get it all done in 5 and it's amazing. And I think that part of it also sort of clicked in people's heads and they went, oh, I can work from home. I could potentially get my own clients. The idea of the side hustle too kind of kicked being a few years ago. This idea that like I can have a full-time job, but then I can also maybe do a side hustle and get a few clients on the side to do this other thing, either with my main skill set or with something else that I'm passionate about. And of course, all of that has to do with your employment agreements and contracts with your employer and everything. But the side hustle culture, I think, really helped to legitimize people going into independent contractor work. And once you get 2 or 3 side hustle jobs, 2 or 3 little contracts, you can maybe get 4 and 5 and 6. And then pretty soon you're looking at it going like, with these references and with some other people that I know, I could turn this into my full-time job,
Well, and I think it's cool. Like once you start realizing like you can make money for yourself too, then that is when like the shoe drops and you're like, okay, I don't really have to do this regular job anymore. I can actually build something for myself. Like that to me was like the tipping point.
Yeah. And being able to sort of like scale that up and I don't have to quit my job and then start a business plan and spend 6 months ramping up and figuring out how to develop a product and do, all the things that you think of as like a traditional business. If we go back to my selling tires thing, if I was doing that, there would be a lot of full-time unpaid work up front to set up a storefront and to make connections to vendors and to get a line of credit for tires and buy all the equipment and set it up and get trained on all the new, I'd probably have to quit my job if I was going to start a tire business. And I think you sometimes still think of it that way too, but in reality, like with technology the way that it is, like I could start 3 businesses this afternoon. I could build them all with AI bots and code up some little thing with some vibe coding tool. And I could be like, all right, here's 3 new businesses today. And they might not be good, but like you can trial and error so quickly now too. That's the other part. Like I have this idea, I can test it out. I can see if there's a market for it. Oh, there's not a market for it. No big deal. I only spent 6 hours on it. Boom. I can go to the next one. I can do print on demand t-shirts and I can try to sell t-shirts for like beach wear. And if that doesn't work, I can do mountain wear. And if that doesn't work, then I can do, like tennis parent, t-shirts that support my kids at the tennis tournaments, whatever. Like I can find little niches and test things out and see where it's going to go. And I can get all that data and information back so quickly now. It used to be that all of that was analog and I had to like ask for it. But now, and this is the other part, if you find the ways to measure this with some data, you can move and pivot and change your business really, really quickly with not a lot of extra cost if you set it.
Yeah. I think there's always a little bit of risk, but the fear and risk I think is a lot lower than it was like 15 years ago to like start a business and get a business going.
Yeah. I mean, even just building a website. It used to be that building a website was very expensive or you had to know how to do it yourself and it was highly technical. And again, like I could build a website in 20 minutes now. And I just need to know what information I want to type in and I need a picture or some sort of image and I'm good. I got a website.
The time is now.
Tens of thousands of dollars, hard to believe. So yeah, you can like spin up new ideas, new businesses, new concepts all the time. And yeah, it's a lot lower risk than it used to be. And that's why we advocate so much. If you're going to do this, start it as a side hustle, start it while you still have some runway. Don't just, quit in a blaze of glory sort of situation and, burn down all the bridges from your employer and then start. Just don't do that. Start it on the side and then slowly build it up. And then that way the transition's a little safer and easier. You feel more comfortable once you're there and you've got your revenue coming in on a relatively regular basis. You'll find that like being able to go get your own business and scale your business up and down is something that you can learn how to do. It's an actual skill to learn how to do that. You're not just at the whims of when people want me to do work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you started off, did you have any supporters and did you have any critics for starting your freelance?
When I started, I remember that like push pull of feeling like I was faking it a little bit and just how weird that feels to be like, I'm doing this now. And I don't think I had any critics. I had people who were just kind of like questioning my decisions. Like, oh, you're leaving this amazing agency job where you get to wear whatever you want and you can bring dogs to the office and you can, spend half the day laying around on a couch thinking of ideas to do what? To just figure stuff out. I think my parents, who are pretty traditional minded from a work perspective at that point, were just like, they trusted me, they believed in me, but they were like, yeah, so what are you going to do for like, health insurance and how are you going to pay for the car? And then people like, I kind of came through an agency, school, like portfolio program. So there was a lot of alumni that were just like, what do it's, huh? But nobody was really critical. Nobody was like, that's a stupid idea. Like, how foolish are you? They were just kind of curious, I would say, to see how it was all going to play out for me. So I think I had definitely had some supporters, people who knew where I was in my life and knew that I needed to make that transition, or just like, yeah, you need that. And so that was really valuable. I think coming out, when it came out and I was like, I need to figure out how I'm going to say this is what I'm doing. A lot of this material that we put out at Uncompany, positioning statement templates and worksheets and startup lists and stuff, that didn't exist. And so I was very much like piecing things together. I'd never started a business before. So it was a lot of meeting people and asking questions. And I can remember going to some of those first networking events, and I was like, I'm Maari Casey, and I'm a art director, designer, and I do, you feel a little fumbly. So we always talk about when you're starting that first part where you're just introducing your business, like just to get really comfortable with it and say it to yourself in the mirror 60 times and shorten it and try different things and go to different events and say it. Because it's like the more you say it, the more you also start to believe it. And you just have to keep going. You have to kind of get past that point of like, wow, I'm faking it right now a little bit. I'm putting together budgets for this year when I have no history of knowing how much I could make. All of that is just part of the process of like, you put stuff out there and then you realize like, oh, I need to tweak this. I need to change this. But that was definitely the first 6 months, I would say, were the part where I'm like, I needed my people around me that believed in me and could push me. And also the people who were years ahead of me or could help to network for me. So building the team early was pretty critical.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is real and it never goes away. And that's the secret that a lot of people don't understand, is that you could be doing this for 10 years, 15 years, and you still, on occasion or even on a daily basis, feel like, is this real? Am I legitimately a business? Imposter syndrome is real. And what's really crazy is that it doesn't matter what business you're in. It doesn't matter if you're like a professional athlete. There's so many people that still feel like, how did I get here? Do I deserve this? Is this where I'm supposed to be? And, I've heard so many tennis players talk about that. Like they're at the US Open and they're playing the US Open. They're like, whoa, I never thought I'd be here. Like I'm on the court with people I used to look up to. Should I be here? And it's like, well, yeah, you're one of the top 100 tennis players in the world, and they still sometimes have imposter syndrome about things. And so when you really put it into that context, it's like everybody struggles with this stuff except for a handful of egomaniacs.
Yeah.
The egomaniacs, they're a different breed, but for the rest of us, it's just something that people deal with. And I think understanding that if you're stressed out or worried or concerned about something and you're at a networking event, most everyone else in that room is stressed out about the same thing. They're all feeling some imposter syndrome. They're all feeling like, I'm trying to fake it till I make it, until I get to that, what everybody feels that way. It's not just you. And once you see it like that, it's sort of the same thing as like being on stage and people saying like, oh, well, if you have stage fright, picture everybody naked. Well, it's the same kind of thing as that. By the way, that doesn't work for me.
I don't think that would work.
But it is true that like you just need to put your mind past it and go, okay, we're all in this thing together. Like it's not me against the world or me against these people. It's like, this is a room full of people that all feel like I do. And we should like use that together to support each other.
We're all perpetually in middle school. I've said the same thing to my daughter and my son that I also feel like I should say to myself, which is like what you're saying, that they're not thinking about you because they're worried about themselves and worried about you thinking about them. And I think maybe you share this, but I remember talking to someone I was preparing a speech. It's like, they want you to be successful.
Yeah.
When you walk into pitch, like when you walk in to sell your business, and I told this to my daughter, she just gave a speech a couple of weeks ago. I was like, everybody who's sitting there listening to you wants you to do well. Like they're not hoping that you collapse or forget what you're saying or boggle the end or something. It's like they want you to do well. So I think like trying to go into your pitches or even client conversations or networking events, knowing like the person that's receiving your information wants to hear it and is excited to hear it and wants you to do well. That's something I always forget. And I don't know why I think like someone just wants to see me just fail and do, but it's like we're kind of all perpetually living in middle school a little bit, even as adults, where we just have to understand like, what other people are feeling the same stuff that we're feeling.
Yeah. I mean, only the worst of us want to watch other people fail. If you're in the room, then you're in the room for a reason. And that's part of it too. Like, yeah, people, most of the time, if you're in the room pitching your business, it's because that business needs a problem to be solved. And they're hoping that you're the one that can solve it for them. And unless you disprove that, unless you like show in your presentation that you can't solve the problem, they want to hire you. That's why you're there. Yeah. They need your help. It is funny that we see it from the other side a little bit more. And we're like, we have to prove it to them. It's like, well, we need to find out if we're a good fit together. That's
Right.
the goal. Do you, as a client, do you fit me and what I want to do and my goals for my business and my portfolio? Does that work and fit together? And from the client's perspective, it's the same thing. It's like, freelancer, do you work in a way that can work with us? Are you going to deliver the type of work that we are looking for, the results that we're looking for? And you're really just looking for like a fit, a match. It's almost like dating in that way. And it's like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. But when you go into it, everybody goes into it with optimism.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think as a freelancer, when you're introducing yourself for the first, and even to like other people at a networking event or clients, and you're doing it and you're feeling inadequate, it's like, again, they want you to be successful. Like, I mean, when I've talked to people when I started freelancing, one of the things that I was always amazed about is they're like, that's so awesome that you're doing that. Like, that's so brave. I wish I could do that. Most of the time, people who are receiving your information or hearing about your business for the first time are a little like jealous that you had the guts to step out and do it. Like they want you to do that because like they also want to be able to have the courage to kind of step out and build something for themselves. So that was always something that was really surprising to me is I would meet someone, I'd be like, I'm our director of designer, I'm working with this, and they'd be like, that's so cool. I've always wanted, like they were so encouraging. It's like they're cheering for you, and so it's good to remember that too, that people usually are also, excited to, because they want to do that eventually too. So you're kind of encouraging them.
Absolutely. So on the other side, did you ever run into a negative person or any negative feedback? Somebody that was just like, oh, you can't do that. That's not possible. Like nobody can do that on their own and go make money and get clients. Did you ever run into that?
Yeah, I think I ran into some people who maybe were a little salty, like freelancers who weren't doing well, or like some traditional, like old school folks. Like my grandparents, I think were probably like, what's happening? But it was usually a situation that like you kind of see like, okay, well, that's just because you're 80 or, you've worked at the same company for 60 years. Or like you're maybe just not a nice person, you can't get any work or whatever. There's a couple of those I was just like, they'd be like, oh, well, good luck. So there's no way you're going to get as much, you're going to be doing a bunch of terrible work and, having to scrape it together. And usually I was somebody who was either having like a really bad season of business and they were just kind of cranky, or they were just really, really traditional minded and they were more afraid that they didn't want to see me struggle. So I had to like back myself up and be like, well, why are my grandparents like telling me that this is not going to work, or whoever it was? And it's just to be like, well, they just don't want to see me struggle. They're worried that it's not going to work out and I'm going to be bummed and whatever. And so I think if you had to put that in perspective too and be like, no, it's fine, I got this. Or this person is not like me because they're a jerk and they can't get work because of that. But for the most part, people were pretty encouraging, even from the very beginning, even when I really didn't know what I was doing in starting out. I was almost negative. I found myself meeting up with my old agency friends and like reassuring them that I was okay. I was like, I'm doing great. I met this client and I did this. And they were just like, cool. Like they had no question that I wasn't doing okay. But I found myself trying to like give them my list of accolades that meant that I was okay. And then I was like, I don't need to prove that I'm okay. I am okay. And that was a big realization too.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that struck me too is if you have a good cheerleader or a good mentor or a person like that you go to and that they want you to succeed, I think it's also good to go to those same people and say, okay, this is my idea. These are the things that I'm working on, or this is my plan or whatever. You tell me what struggles I'm going to face. Tell me what obstacles I'm going to run into. Tell me why I might fail. And let those people that you trust, not the negative people. Don't listen to what the negative people have to say if they're just always negative. But you find somebody that's in your corner and say, okay, tell me why I'm going to fail. And then let them give you different reasons so that you can put that into your planning or into your thought process and say, okay, these are the roadblocks that are likely to show up because they've experienced it before. And if you find those positive people and you can find more than one, like find 3 or 4 or 5 and ask them that question, what are the roadblocks I'm going to run into, the obstacles? Why might I fail? What are what struggles did you have to overcome? Am I the right type of person for this? What are the skills that I need to develop based on me, right? You know who I am and what I'm capable of, but what am I lacking in order to be successful so that I can go out and get that stuff? If you find that with people that are in your corner and they're honest with you and you listen to that as honest criticism, like constructive criticism, not negative criticism, you're really going to set yourself up, I think, to be successful in the long run. It is one thing to like have positive people, but it's another thing to have positive people who are going to help you to improve and get better. just
Mhm.
like would, on a coach in your high school basketball team or whatever. Like they might be constructively critical of your shot, but they're doing that so that you'll be better at it later.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of coaching, like business coaching and even like business freelance coaching, which has gotten to be a little bit bigger. Because I do think, especially in the creative marketing where we live, it's like we didn't go to school for business, most of us. And so we don't have those tools and resources. And so it's hard because it's like you feel like you're failing, but it's like it's just because you've never learned how to do that skill. Like going to a basketball game if you've never picked up a ball. It's like you can't be hard on yourself for trying to do something for the first time ever. So it's great to have a coach. And it's like you can't afford to necessarily hire a coach ongoing, like building your team around you of people who have done it, who are 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead of you. And then being really methodical about asking them where they can support you. But all of that stuff also, I think when you prioritize your business, having a coach or having those mentorship things helps you to make you feel more legitimate, right? It helps you to feel like, I don't need to apologize for this business because this is a real business. Look, I'm working on career development. I've got my finances set up. I've got my network set up. It's like you're rounding out all the pieces that you would find in like a traditional employment role. You're just doing it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So as sort of our last question before we introduce Amy here, what made you realize that it was actually working for you? What were the little nuggets as you went along, the day that you went like, oh, this is a real thing?
Yeah. Well, I think right away within the first 6 months where I was like getting enough, I remember I set a budget that was like, this is absolute. Okay, I'm able to provide peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for me and my husband. We have enough money to feed ourselves versus like, here's what I want to make versus like, here's a stretch goal. And it was probably after like 3 or 4 months of being able to meet those milestones and be like, okay, well, covered peanut butter and jelly. Now I'm actually making this. I was like, this is working, and I remember when I first started, I had like a 3-month contract with an agency, which was a great bridge. And then in that period of time, I was able to get the next work and the next work and start to build up some clients and being able to hit my budget, my goal to like my revenue goal for each single month consistently like that. And then also just to be able to take a break and be like, okay, well, I've made as much as I need this month. Like I'm going to take Thursday and Friday off. I'm going to be able to go get my groceries in a little day. I'm going to be able to do something else. Like being able to have a combination of work and life and be able to still pay my bills and feel like I was growing that was like where I was like, holy crap, everybody in the world should do this. I'm going to yell it from the rooftops. Like, why is it? Because it was so freeing, and then to start to see growth over the course of time. Like I wasn't trying to drive new business all the time. I was trying to hit these goals and stay flexible with like what I was doing with my life as well as work. But when I started to do that consistently and then meet other people who had been doing it for 5, 10, 15 years, and they've been doing it consistently for 15 years, that's when I was like, all right, like this is legit. This is a thing. Let's go. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah, totally. I think for me, it was the first time I was able to say no to something because I didn't need the money financially.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like,
that's a good one.
like, I can take Thursday and Friday off, but the first time I could turn down a project and say that project doesn't fit me, I'm not the best fit for you. That was the moment where it's like, okay, yeah, I feel
Yes.
I feel secure. And so it's always like, we say this a lot, like no is a full sentence, but it's not necessarily always a bad thing. It can be a very empowering thing. And when you are able to go into the conversation and say, I'm not the best fit for you, here are some reasons why. I have a friend and I'd like to recommend them instead.
Yeah.
Like there's a
That's
lot.
what I was going to add. Yeah.
Yeah.
Adding like when you start giving work away and there's no fear of scarcity because you're like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to get more.
Right.
Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's another one too, because then you feel like you're making a new connection. That helps provide more value to that client as well. They'll come back to you later on. I mean, that's basically how Uncompany started, right? Was like you were starting to recommend friends, and then that became the business. And because the companies recognized that one of the big values that you provided, like you can do graphic design work, but your real value was the connection to your network so that you could solve bigger problems together with a bigger group of people. And so it can actually help improve and grow your business by saying, I'm not the right fit, but this other person is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the true.
All right. Well, we're going to transition this a little bit to a chat with one of our good friends, Amy Burtch. Amy has spent the last several years building up AMB Copy. It is her own copywriting business. It's a sort of a copywriting agency. It kind of started as just her as a copywriter, and now she employs some freelancers. And they don't just do copywriting anymore. She does graphic design work, project management work, and she's built up her own sort of network of freelancers so that she functions as her own creative services agency. So, without any further ado, we're going to hop straight into that conversation with Amy. So, warm-up question for you, Amy. What were you doing before you launched your business? And what made you decide to go into business for yourself? Maybe those are two different questions or the same question.
Well, I was an English instructor at Durham Tech Community College. I had started at Lenore Community College in Kinston and then was at Durham Tech. And I knew that I was not loving teaching. And so I had kind of started looking at other jobs. I really enjoyed advising. So I was looking at like Duke or UNC for maybe getting into some sort of advising position. And then I got pregnant. And so I needed that health insurance. So I said, no, I'm going to stick with teaching for a little bit longer. But after having my first child, and I took a year off teaching and then went back. And when I went back, I was like, yeah, no, this isn't going to happen. But I like being a professional, but I also wanted to be the mom I wanted to be. So that's kind of when I started toying with the idea of going independent.
Okay. So when you started to think about going independent and doing things on your own, what were a couple of the concerns that you had starting off? I know you wanted probably control of your own schedule and all of those types of things, but what were the worries that you had in your head? Like, what was the first thing that popped in your head? Like, am I going to make any money? Will I get any clients? Like, what were your sort of like initial stressors?
Well, one, too. I mean, I was a writer. I was teaching writing, but I wasn't a copywriter. My sister also owns a PR marketing agency, and she had been independent for a period of time. So I started kind of picking up a few jobs with her business, Bounce Path, and it made it a little bit more real to me that, oh, hey, I can do this. And then also when I resigned from teaching, I started working part-time in the marketing and comms department of Durham Tech. So I was doing some of their internal, external communication and realizing that, yes, I can do this.
Yeah. Were you afraid of how you would get your first client? Or, what were the things that you wrestled with in trying to make that plan of, I'm going to go from teaching to going to be a business owner?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was income. That was my biggest fear. And because obviously this was not my 5-year plan. I was going to keep working full time once I had kids, but then I didn't really want to. And, but I felt confident that I could meet people and I could, do the networking piece of it and build the business. As I said, I had a good example in my sister. And then my husband was also very supportive of me doing this. And he's in a similar industry. So, he felt that he could see that, that I could succeed in building my own business. So, but the big fear was, how are we going to support ourselves, without my full-time income?
Sure.
Yeah. I think you did it. It's interesting because I think a lot of times with people, when they're making that first jump, there's like a couple schools of thought, and it's people who are like, they walk in on Friday, they're like, I'm out. And then they're like, Monday, like, okay, what am I going to do now? And like, I'm not that person. I don't think you're that person, and then I think I always say the smart way to do it is to like build a little bridge. And for you, that was helping you feel more like legitimate. I can do this. I can go from English teaching to copywriter. And now I've started to kind of add those tools in my toolbox. And now I just got to do it for myself. And I think it's like a really smart way to make that transition because it is a big jump to go from here to here without any kind of bridge. Let's talk a little bit more about what you did and the kind of how you started to build those components and maybe the people and the team that you put around you as you were starting to make that transition out of traditional employment into building your own business.
Yeah. I mean, I was in a really interesting time in my life because I had a 2-year-old and a newborn. And I decided that I would take that year that my second child was a newborn and build the business because, like you said, I like to be very buttoned up. So I wanted to, when I officially launched, I wanted to have, all my T's crossed, my I's dotted, all that kind of good stuff. So I worked very part-time and started doing all the things to establish the business. So everything from logo to website to becoming an LLC to working with an accountant to establish my QuickBooks, all those kinds of things to get myself started. And then in that same time period, I started having conversations with people that were doing similar things, other independents or people that were in positions that I could maybe work with or write for. And Maari was definitely one of my first people that I talked to. I can still remember sitting at her kitchen table and talking about, working for herself. And that was a perfect example of like, I met Maari and Maari gave me 3 more names, right? And so then I had to go talk with 3 more people. And that was just really a time of exploration. And then by the end of that year, I officially launched my business. But I mean, I had, my business cards, I had the website, I had all the things lined up. And I know a lot of people may not approach it that way, but that was how I had to do it.
So when you say launched your business, what did that mean to you at the time? Did that just mean like putting it on LinkedIn and saying like, I'm a business now? Or like, how did you go about the launch part in your mind?
I guess the launch is like when I launched the website, and was like, okay, and had the cards and I was kind of talking to people up until then. But when I really started, this is AMB Copy, these are my services. I had a real website. And it's funny how you kind of, at that point, I had done some jobs. So you are like, okay, let me get a few quotes from people the very few people that I work with, because you want to feel robust, even if it's been pretty slim up to that point. But that's kind of how I officially, when I launched that website and was like, this is what I'm doing. Now, granted, I still had babies, so I had very good boundaries. These are the days I work. And I would right up front with my clients be like, if this does not work for you, then we can't work together. And I think since I did not come from an ad agency background, I didn't have a where, I have a husband who was in the ad agency and I just, there would be nights he came home at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. We need this yesterday. And since I never had that background, I didn't operate that way. And in setting up the business, I knew my limitations because I was raising these babies. So I was very intentional about setting boundaries. And that's how I had to start. Now I'm full-time and I grew it as they grew, the business grew. But
sure. Yeah. I love that setting boundaries part because I think that's something that people skip over a lot when they start to think about, okay, I'm a business of one or a small business or whatever. And you think like, however I can get the job, whatever I have to agree to, however much money it is, I'll be super flexible to start off with because I just need the work. I need the portfolio. But for you to be very intentional about, these are the days that I work. These are the hours. This is what I do. Here are my skills, laying all that out for people from the beginning, then it allows your clients to have a roadmap on how to work with you. I think that's the biggest that a lot of people miss is if you tell your clients, this is how I work best, then they can respond to that. But if you're just kind of like, yeah, I'll take anything, I'll do whatever, then I feel like that's where a lot of freelancers just feel like they get run over by the client. They get like sort of bulldozed. So it sounds like by doing that, whether you are aware of it or not, you probably saved yourself some pain and struggle when it comes to, setting boundaries.
I think so.
Yeah.
I do. I feel like it's funny because a lot of times when people start working, like you said, they don't have any boundaries and they're kind of taking everything. And it does tend to set them up for those early mistakes where it's like scope creep or, toxic client or they're text messaging you on Saturday morning, or it's because, when you kind of go a little bit wild, when you start a little bit wide open, then you're going to pull in a lot of people, right? Some of the people are going to be great, but you're going to also kind of by default pull those people who maybe aren't great to work with. And so it is really important. And I think a lot of times we do that in the beginning because we're kind of afraid. We're a little bit like, I think this was going to work out, but I'm not quite sure. Like, would you hire me? As opposed to like, let's work together. The approach is just a little different. And when you go with the approach, it's like, would you hire me? versus like, let's work together, then it's more like they're there to take advantage of you in a way, or they're there to get what they need out of you and they kind of dispose of you. So I think it's definitely a good mindset to approach it, where it's like, even in the beginning, it's like, should we work together? If not, it's fine, because you will find the right people. But if you kind of come at it with like, will you hire me, please? Then you're going to get a lot of trash mixed into the net.
Well, I can remember that time. Like, it was such a good feeling when I had, a introductory call with a potential new client. And in that 15 minutes, I was like, yeah, I don't want to work with this person. And to be like, I don't have to.
Yeah.
It's scary to do that when you're starting out. But when you get to that point, you can be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So it's a good place to be.
Yeah, I would imagine that was a sort of an empowering moment for you in some ways, to say, I don't have to take your word. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to sugarcoat things. I mean, those first 2 years, and granted, I was working very part-time because of my responsibilities with the kids, but I was getting jobs. I was building my portfolio, but I mean, it was in the red for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But after 2 years, I have grown my business every year.
Mhm.
So there was a little bit of that, but then I eventually got to the point, and I've been really blessed in the sense that I have, I have jobs that come and go, but I also have had some very long-term clients that have sustained me and have great relationships, with those folks. But even now, sometimes I have to remind people that, it's just me and my team of freelancers. I do have some, contractors that I work with, but it is a constant reminding of boundaries, I guess would be a good word, in that, I can't always be at your beck and call. I can't, because of the nature of being an independent.
Yeah. You just mentioned like 2 years in the red, right? And then you started to turn a profit and started to feel like the business was gaining some traction and things. Is that about the same time when at what point did you feel comfortable saying to people, yeah, I am the owner of AMB Copy. This is what I do. This is my job for a living. This is my thing. I can't imagine that was like, it could have been when you launched the website, right? It could have been when you took the first client job. Like, at what point did you feel like you were legit, quote unquote?
Yeah. I mean, I was so intentional about building the business that I felt pretty legit early on. But again, I kind of entered into this new field. I knew I was a good writer. I knew that was the case, but there's so much more to it when you decide to do this. I didn't get into this because I thought I was a great business owner. I got into this because I wanted to write, and I wanted to be creative, and I wanted to have flexibility with my family. So that piece of it, of being a business owner and becoming more confident in other skills and other services that I now offer, I mean, I think that took longer.
Mhm.
But I still remember the very first time I increased my rate significantly. I remember it was in a Starbucks right up the road from my house, and I was meeting with a newer client. And I mean, I had a pit in my stomach, and I was like, I'm going to now my rate is, a lot more than that number then, but I was like, I'm just going to say, when he asked, I'm just going to say this is my rate, and I had myself so worked up, and I said it, and he was just like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just owned it. And that person I no longer, neither of us actually worked for the client that it was, but that person actually went on to be like one of my business mentors, and we are still connected. This was back in, gosh, I don't know, got to be at least 10 years ago, and we're still connected. But I remember like really having to own that. And even now, sometimes when I increase my rate for like long-term clients, it's hard. It's not an easy thing, but I still know that, I mean, that I'm worth that that's my value.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Isn't that interesting? Hearing you tell that story, it struck me that it's funny that you created the barrier in your own mind that this was a big deal. And reality, for the person you were talking to, it was just like, okay, that's fine. And one of the things about being a business owner and starting your own thing is, I think sometimes we just get in our own way. We start to have this sort of negative self-talk about, the fear of like, oh gosh, I'm going to go from $50 to $55 an hour. Like, I don't know if the market can stand that. And then you increase by $5 an hour, $10 an hour, whatever it is, every year, every 2 years or whatever. But it's funny that initially it feels like such a big deal. Were there other things like that other than your hourly rate where you just had like a mental block as you were building the business? And then once you like crossed over that barrier, you went, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of the things so when I started, I really was strictly copywriting. But as the two of you both know, when you are an independent and you deliver for a client and they see that you're good at something, they're like, oh, hey, can you do this? And that is one thing that early on I did do. Like I wasn't really like, no, I only do copywriting, because I knew I could do those things. Oh yeah, well, let me just pull a designer in and, we can pull this brochure together. And so when you're talking about, I mean, you didn't say imposter syndrome, but, when I started doing some of that, I was like, wow, am I really, do I have this? Like, am I really, can I do this? And that just led me, the more you do that and the more you take on more things, you build confidence and you're like, yeah, I can do this. I am doing this and I'm doing it well, And so I think the beginning of that, as I grew more services and I started like having more, contractors, pulling in more contractors to work for me, I think I did feel a little like, ooh, can I do this? Am I doing this? And then that confidence grew and the services are now just part of my business.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also, it's funny. It's the same thing I tell my daughter when she's worried about what people are saying at her at school. Like, she was getting ready to do a speech last week. And I'm like, everybody who's sitting in that room, for the most part, they want you to be successful and they believe that you're going to be successful. And I think a lot of times as business owners, especially when we're starting out or we're trying something new, we're going in there thinking like, are they going to believe me that I'm really worth $85 an hour? Are they really going to believe me that I really can run this project with multiple people? And on the flip side, they're like, they already believe you. They're already in, you're
at the table.
You're at the table. They see you as an expert. They just want to get this done and hope that everything comes together. But it's funny because we do go into those situations a lot of time, like we're trying to convince ourselves more than we're trying to convince the client. And I think it's good to get past and understand, like, they want me to be as successful as like I want to be, so I can let go of that fear that I'm trying to fool them that this is all going to work out, because it is going to work out. And then you can get past all that stuff. But it is true. It's like such a barrier to walk into situations where you feel like maybe they're not going to believe what I'm saying. It's really not true. But it's like that falsehood a lot of times stops us from making those big jumps and those big leaps. Like, working with subcontractors is a massive leap for your business. And if you hadn't been able to make that leap, then you'd still be just doing it all yourself.
Yeah, and to let others support you. I think independence, you're a certain type of person, like maybe you're used to like doing it all yourself, or, and being able to, and, I'm not sure, this is probably something I'm still in the learning process, but to delegate more and to, let others come along and support you and help you. I will say one thing I think that is still super challenging and is that juggling of multiple clients. Like, I'm always looking for efficiencies in how I manage multiple clients. And I think that's something maybe people that are new into becoming entrepreneurs or independents or freelancers or however you want to call it. I think that's a piece that is always presents a challenge. And I think I try new ways all the time. But for AMB Copy, I use Basecamp, which is a good, project management software, but all my clients use different things. So I know Monday.com, I know Basecamp, I know Trello, all the things. What do y'all use? Discord?
Discord.
Yeah. Thinking about that piece, I think is really helpful. And also acknowledging that nothing is a perfect system, and you're going to have to continually reimagine that and understand that piece of it. I mean, do y'all agree?
Oh yeah. John and I have talked about this several times. It's like the business that started 12 years ago is a different business than it is now, and multiple times over. I think that's part of it too. If you go in and you are, no, I'm not going to say controlling, but maybe you're like a type A, like organization, you like to have things set up. And if you go into a business with like, this is what it's going to be, and it's not changing, and you're super rigid, like you mentioned, that your services have changed. Like if you shut that stuff off, even feedback, you get feedback from a client that's like, this person was super difficult to work with, and I'm going to add that red flag into my list of red flags to clients I don't want to work with. Like if you don't keep gathering information and data along the way, then you're going to really shut your business off to potential like revenue, additional revenue, and also just growth. Because if you're like, I'm always going to be a single person, I'm always going to be a solopreneur, I don't want to ever work with somebody else, well, then you're going to only be able to grow so fast and so big if you don't bring in subcontractors and work with them, because you're either afraid or you want to keep everything controlled. So it is really good to like constantly be open to iteration and changes, because also as time happens and you hopefully have the business for a long time, things just kind of come in and out of trend. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that in your business. It's like what was trendy, 10 years ago or whenever you started your business is now there's a different office offering a different service that needs to be provided.
Yeah. And I think that changes also depending on where you are in your life. Like now, instead of having babies, I have teenage children and they have different needs. And so this might be a time in my business, and when I'm, pulling back a little bit and doing more of the work myself, because that's what I need for other, I'm also caring for aging parents. So, you know what I mean? Like, so maybe I need to rely more on contractors right now. So that's another, that ebb and flow and that flexibility. It's just essential to what we do, I think.
Yeah. Well, and if we actually can do that. I think that's the cool thing about building your own business is like, we don't have to be super rigid. I think I see that a lot too when people start a business or even years into it. It's like they approach it like they are a corporation. Everything's perfect. There's no cracks. There's no changes. It's like, I'm still working from 9 to 9. It's like, you don't have to do that. You can still be a business that's successful and have that flexibility. Because I'm in the same boat where it's like my kids are little. I was done by this certain time. Now I'm done by 3 because I want to take them to practice. The nice thing is like we can build a business that is professional but has flexibility, and you don't have to model a traditional business when you're building your business. I think that's the point.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, sometimes though, I mean, I'm human. Sometimes I'll look at LinkedIn. I'll be like, oh, there's a job at Dropbox. We need a copywriter. What would it be like to have one client? And then I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that I was able to take this Friday off because I needed to do A, B, and C. And I'll just write that story when I'm at a volleyball tournament this week.
Yeah.
Like that. That's essential.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. I come back to that a lot. Like I can't imagine, I'm 13, 14 years in, and I really can't imagine working in a different way.
Yeah. Interesting. That sort of ability to scale up, scale down, adjust your timeline, adjust, what you need. Maari and I talk a lot about the idea of like contentment and how in your business, you can grow it up to a point where you're content with like, this is the workload. This is the money that we need. And once you get there, then the question is, do I want to scale, and what sacrifices am I willing to make in order to scale bigger? And once you hit that contentment mark, that's like a sweet spot for a lot of people. But then once you get over that and you go to the scale part, there's a huge lift to get to the next level before you can be content again.
Yeah.
And so finding that little bit of like that nice little sweet spot is a really tough, tricky one. But it sounds like you've sort of figured that out for yourself over time, figuring out like flexibility and your time is very important to you. It sounds like, as opposed to like being locked into a 9 to 5 or whatever.
So about 2 years ago, my business goal was to meet with other women in the Triangle who have similar businesses to me, but have gone to like the 2 to 5 employee model, and to talk to them about how they made that decision, why they made that decision, and what they think about where they are. Because I did get to a point, like you're saying, that it was like, okay, here I am, but if I'm going to really grow the business, I have to scale. And is going with employees the way to do it. And that was a true eye-opening year. And as you can tell, I have no employees. So I think I'm happy where I am. And I'm not saying that's off the table event, it's someday, but right now I think that I'm okay not taking that next leap.
Yeah, sure. The goal doesn't have to be more billable hours.
Well, and also in my situation, I think what it really came down for me is, do I want to manage more or do I want to be creative more? And I still write the majority of my stories. And it is a true joy in my life. I mean, like the story I'm writing today, the woman she was the first African-American woman to graduate with a PhD from NC State in microbiology. She was the first full-time professor in science at Duke. She was, she was one of 13 siblings born in rural North Carolina.
Wow.
Undergrad at Central, master's at UNC, PhD at NC State, and career at Duke. I get to spend an hour with this person and then tell her story, share. And that's just one story out of, probably multiple ones I have a week. And I don't think I want to give that up to manage people. It's just, so that's kind of where I landed on that. But, to be seen. We'll see.
That is a really great, to me, explanation of that contentment thing. And that, this is the thing I love to do, and this is what I want to keep doing. This is the same thing. Maari and I have this discussion at the end of every year. We have this list of what do you want to keep doing? What do you want to stop doing? And then let's figure out how to make that work. And it sounds like you've sort of figured that out for yourself. I want to keep writing. At the end of the day, it's AMB Copy, got my name on it. I write copy, right?
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. And, managing employees can be its own thing. And there's some people that really just want to manage employees and then want to grow a business. Cool. Good for them. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the nice thing about managing contractors, for the most part, is you're handing them work. So they want to work for you. So a lot of times you don't have the management issues that you might if you were managing employees, right?
Yeah.
So that normally is a true joy to work with other contractors, especially ones that are younger than me, because I will never go back to teaching, but I do miss advising. I do miss that kind of relationship. So if I have junior copywriters, or even junior designers or, working with me, I like to help them not just, with their craft, but with just the business part of it, just how to work with a client or how to give direction to another designer or copywriter and not that my way is the best way, but just that I've had success with it. And here's a way to be efficient and thorough. And, this might help you run your business.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Let's move on to the lightning round. This is going to be the challenge. This is always the challenge. It's one question, one answer. And sometimes we get people that just say it in a sentence, and sometimes that sentence turns into a 500-word dissertation. So however you want to do it, but idea is short, quick, and simple. So name one thing you wish you'd known before starting your business.
Gosh, this is hard. To trust my worth.
Ooh, I like it.
That's a good one.
And it was short and sweet.
She follows instructions really well.
Remember, my tagline is "That's the point." Although I can talk, I'm a very succinct writer.
All right, next one. What's one question you get over and over when people find out you're self-employed?
Can't you just take off whenever you want?
Yeah, why not?
Do you really have to work today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good one. All right. Last one. Is there anything that could make you consider being an employee again? What would it take?
I'm interested I would like to travel for work. And if there was a job that could enable me to continue writing and travel once my children have graduated and moved on, I think I would be interested in that.
Yeah. So you got to hit a couple life milestones and then you if it's travel, if it's something you're interested in. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Great. Nailed it.
I think I would do the same thing. I will take that. I'll take that answer too. I could travel and do something.
Yeah. Travel on somebody else's dime. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. I think I could see a travel writer if like someone would hire me, to do that. I could see that.
Yeah.
For certain.
Well, and the great thing about being a freelancer or independent business owner is that if you get to the point where you decide that's what you want to do, you could just shift your business that direction too. Say, I'm going to travel right now.
Yeah. I don't think I haven't looked at those little sprinter vans that I can.
Yeah.
I could see you guys doing that, except you would have to take your guard. You have to pull your garden behind your sprinter.
Oh, that's
yeah, that would work. And, it's got to have room for a couple dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Amy. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we leave, if people want to reach out to you or talk to you, can you tell us where they might be able to find you? Is it ambcopy.com?
It is ambcopy.com. I will be launching a new website soon. I am also on LinkedIn. I do have an AMB copy, but I mostly just go to Amy Burtch on LinkedIn. But
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again to Amy for sitting down with us and sharing her solopreneur story. Amy can be found at ambcopy.com. And so just reach out to her if you're ever interested in the services that she provides. Until next time, I'm John.
And I'm Maari.
And we're reminding you that quitters can win and winners can quit. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Command Q or Uncompany.